Welcome back. In this video, we're going to learn how to draw shapes. We'll start by drawing a circle to the screen. We're going to learn how to detect when we've pressed a key on the keyboard, and then we'll use that information to move our circle on the screen by changing its position. We'll do this by using an if statement, which will let us check to see if we're pressing the A or the D keys. Let's dive in. Raylib has a function called drawCircle. I bet you can guess what it does. That's right, it draws a circle to the canvas on our window. Now, drawCircle takes a few inputs. The first three, called center X, center Y, and radius, are all integers. The fourth argument, called color, takes, well, a color. It's expecting one of Raylib's built-in colors, like the ones we've been using thus far. The radius is half of the circle's diameter. Now, if you were too busy eating your glue stick while the teacher was droning on about this in school, here's a circle, here's its diameter, and half of that is the radius. Now, what do we mean by x and y with our center x and center y? Well, here's a Raylib window. And from the left to right is the x direction. We gave our window a width of 350, so if you were a tiny little dot standing up at the top left corner of the canvas, then your x-coordinate would be 0. And if you ran toward the right until you hit the right edge of the window and stopped right there, your new x-coordinate would be 350. At which point you would stop and drink some water because 350 pixels is quite a run. Now, the vertical direction is the y direction, and strangely, it starts at the upper left corner and points downward. Now, we gave our window a height of 200. So if you started off at the top left corner once again, your y coordinate would be 0. And then, if you ran with all your might, running at 100 pixels per hour, and stopped at the bottom edge of the window, your new y coordinate would then be 200. We can represent xy coordinates like this. Each of the red dots at the four corners of the canvas has its own xy coordinates, represented by an ordered pair, first the x, then the y coordinate. Well, drawCircle takes x and y coordinates for its center x and center y parameters in pixels, so we can choose where the circle gets placed on the canvas. So your challenge is to add a call to drawCircle inside the while loop just after clear background. Place the circle in the center of the window. You might have to do some math to figure out the coordinates of the window's center. Give the circle a radius of 25 and use blue for the color. Pause the video and give this a try. Okay, so here we are in our program. Now we're going to place our call to drawCircle just after clear background, so I'm going to give it some room here. I'll hit tab a couple times to indent it, and I'll type drawCircle. Now here's drawCircle. I'm going to click on that to use autocomplete. Now I'll open the parentheses and I'll see the pop-up show me that the first parameter is the center x. Now I know the width is 350 and half of 350 is 175, so I know that halfway through from left to right is 175. Now the height that we're passing in is 200, so half of that is 100. Halfway down the window is 100 pixels down. Now next it needs the radius, and we're going to use 25. And finally, for the color, I'll use Raylib's blue color. There's my semicolon, so let's go ahead and hit run and start debugging to take a look at this. And there it is, my circle is right in the middle, and I still have that hideous red background, which I'd like to change to white, so I'm going to go ahead and change the clear background call to take white instead of red. Okay, so we know how to draw a circle to the screen. We're now ready for the if statement. Here's what it looks like. It's the if keyword followed by parentheses and a body. It looks a lot like the while loop. Inside the parentheses goes the condition. which is a Boolean expression. If this Boolean expression evaluates to true, then the body of the if statement gets to execute. But if the expression evaluates to false, the statements in the body will never see the light of day. I could use a little sun myself. Now, raylib contains a function that will tell us whether or not we're pressing certain keys. It's called isKeyDown, and it takes an input for the key. Now, this input is of integer type. So how are we supposed to know which integer is used for the D key? Well, just like raylib has a bunch of variables for each color, it also has a bunch of variables for the different keys on the keyboard. These variables just magically work with functions that expect a key, such as the isKeyDown function. If we want the D key, then we can use the variable key_D in all caps. So let's go back into VS Code and I'll show you how we can use the isKeyDown function to move our circle. So here we are in VS Code. Now I'd like our program to start looking a little more organized. So I'm going to add a comment up here at the top of the main function to show us that this is where our window dimensions are beginning. So let's type window dimensions here. Now I'd like width to be initialized on the same line that we declare it. So I'm going to use braced initialization and put our 350 in there so I don't need this line down here. Now, we were pretty lazy and we only created an int variable for width. Let's create one for the height as well. So we'll call this int height. We'll initialize it with braces and we'll give it a value of 200. And instead of passing in the literal value 200, an action known as hard coding the value, we're going to pass in our variable height. Now I'd like to create a couple of variables for the x and y coordinates for our circle. So let's add another comment here and say circle coordinates. Now first I'm going to create an int called circle underscore x for the circle's x coordinate. And I'm going to use braced initialization to give the circle an initial position. We might as well start the circle off in the center, so I'll start its x off at a value of 175. Next, I'll create an int called circle underscore y and initialize this one with 100. Now we can use these variables in draw circle instead of hard coding the values for the x and y coordinates. So let's go ahead and pass in circle x for draw circle's first parameter and circle y for draw circle's second parameter. Now just under clear background, I'd like to add another comment to show us that this is really where the game logic starts. Everything else is just set up in teardown for the while loop. So this comment is going to say game logic begins. And just before end drawing, just to alert us that this is where we're going to stop putting game logic, I'm going to say here game logic ends. And now for our if statement, which is going to go just under draw circle. We're going to say if, and we're going to use isKeyDown. And just like we discussed, we're going to use the keyD raylib variable. Now let's give our if statement a body here. And this is where we're going to do something if the key is down. Now what we'd like to do is make our circle start to move toward the right. So each time the while loop iterates, if the key D is down, we would like to increase circle X by a certain amount. We'll say circle X equals circle X plus some value. Now we're going to try 10 and see how fast the circle moves. Go ahead and click Run and start debugging. Here's our window, and if I press the D key, the circle disappears because it flies right off the window. Now, this is because the while loop executes over and over again so fast that each iteration we're adding 10, and so circle is moving so quickly we can't even see it. Now we can force the window to update at a slower pace. Just above the while loop, we're going to add a new function call. This is a function from the raylib library called setTargetFPS. FPS stands for frames per second, and this function will set a target value for the number of times the window will update each second. Let's use a value of 60. Now go to Run and start debugging. Here's our window. I'll hit the D key. Okay. Okay, so I have another challenge for you. We've just learned how to move the circle to the right. I want you to add the ability to move the circle to the left. So add another if statement just after the first one. In this one, we're going to move the circle to the left and we're going to use the A key. Use key_A in all caps to pass in to the isKeyDown function. Pause the video and try this now. Okay, so we're back in our program. Now, just under our first if statement, we're going to add a second one. And this one is going to be just like the first in that we're calling isKeyDown. Except this time, instead of key D, we're going to use key_A to check to see if we're pressing the A key. And now we need to move circle X. And instead of adding 10 to circle X, we want circle X to decrease so the circle's X coordinate will be lower and the circle will be drawn further to the left. So let's say circle_X equals circle_X minus 10 instead of plus 10. Now let's go to Run and click Start Debugging. Okay, I'm going to press D to move to the right, and then I'll press A to move to the left, and my circle is moving left and right exactly how I wanted it to. Awesome. Okay, so in summary, we used the draw circle function to draw a circle to the screen. We also saw that we could use if statements to check a Boolean expression for its truth value, and if that expression is true, we can execute those statements inside of the if body. We used an if statement to check to see if a particular key is down, and if that key was down, we changed the circle's x-coordinate in order to move the circle. Excellent job! Our game is already starting to come together. We'll see you in the next video.